How do you feel about you talked about an interesting topic on The Odd Couple about in regards to it's Rickwood Field, is it? Trying to remember, and it was about how baseball is just not as popular with black kids now as back in the day. But as Rob was talking about, as you guys were talking about, it almost seems like it's something that's true for all kids that just happens to be more pronounced with black kids, but it's all kids. It just baseball almost seems like it's losing out due to a natural consequence as being outcompeted by these other sports. As somebody who grew up playing baseball, how do you feel about it? Is it just something in this modern world that really can't compete going forward? Or am I, overreacting?
I think you make a great point. And when you use the term modern world, like when I grew up, baseball, I viewed baseball just like I viewed football and basketball. I played it. I went from one sport to the other playing it. All my black friends were playing it in Little League and everything. I was in a majority black Little League in certain places where I lived. And I think that, I think the sport, I think a few things. Football, and when I was a kid, football was not king. It was popular and stuff, but baseball was tops, and then football was somewhere behind it. I think what propelled football to its current status is fantasy football. I think the gambling, I think the interest in, having your own team and following it, that was in like the 90s. And I think that's when football really just skyrocketed and left every other sport behind. So I think that's one of the things that propelled football. I think basketball, David Stern did a tremendous job of marketing individuals rather than the teams. And there might be some negatives to that, but every team, when you think of the NBA, every team's got like somebody you want to see, because of their game or, they're like a marquee name. And I think and then the sport itself lends itself to showing off the athlete's creativity and athletic ability and things like that. Baseball as a sport, it's a slower sport, and it doesn't lend itself as much to showing off the athleticism like basketball. You just can't be as creative in baseball as you can be in basketball, dunking a basketball, dribbling between your legs, all of that behind the back passes. It's just the nature of the sport. But I think because it's so slow, and you can literally watch a baseball game and not see much action for a long time, I think that's hurt the sport. And as our society has become a faster, more I need it now society, and our attention spans are shorter, I do think that's hurt baseball. I used to, as a kid, watch baseball on TV and really just watch a game. But now everything's so much faster that you almost get conditioned to needing immediate action. And I do think that that's hurt baseball. And it's almost becoming, I hate to even say this, but it feels like it's almost becoming a niche sport, where you got that group that likes it and plays it, but it's not almost like hockey to some degree, or soccer. So, and the numbers show that the next generation, as you said, is not playing it like it used to.
Yeah. And what's weird about it, though, is that about as many people watch the World Series as watch the NBA Finals. But for whatever reason, nationally, you can have a debate show and you're talking basketball and people will follow along, and it's part of that conversation. But when Nick starts talking about following the Royals, and it might be at the end of one of your episodes, it's almost like when he says he's going to Vegas to play poker. It's just not, it's not part of this whole thing. And I don't completely understand why that is or what that is, how baseball can be roughly as popular as a viewing experience as the NBA, but maybe 1% of the sports talk conversation. But that's what the market says. People don't really want national baseball talk.
When I first started doing First Take on ESPN with Skip, I remember it was like October. So the baseball playoffs were going on. And I don't know if it was a World Series or just the playoffs. And we were talking NFL football and basketball. We may have done one topic on baseball. And I'm sitting here like, this is the World Series, or these are the championship series. How are we not talking baseball? We're talking more about week 4 of the NFL. And then they explained that, like you said, the surveys were showing in the study groups that they did with people, when you start talking baseball, the ratings plummeted. Wow. And it's the same on national radio. Our show, The Odd Couple, talks more baseball. We don't talk a lot, but we talk more than most national shows. Locally, it's still very talked about. But nationally, it really is not on the radar. Even on First Things First, we have our weird, wilds, weird, and wonderful. And that's where we get our baseball highlights in. But we did not talk hardly any World Series stuff, which is incredible. And I think as far as the ratings, obviously you're right about the World Series, the NBA Finals. I'll be honest, and I think, again, it's some of the change in our society. I think the reason that the playoffs and World Series do better in baseball than maybe the regular season, it's the stakes. Like, I love still watching playoff baseball. Like, I will be glued to the TV watching playoff baseball. But when you play 162 games, why am I going to watch a Tuesday night game in July that's game 78 of 100? I actually think the NBA, I wouldn't mind, as much as I love basketball, if they cut it to maybe 60, 65 games. Baseball, I know they won't do it because they can make money with more games. But if baseball cut it to 100 games, I think the popularity would, and the urgency would be more there in the fan base.
Well, I think you also just need more of a correlation between how good a team is and its playoff success. That's my belief. Some people would disagree, but I don't like this stuff where the worst team has as good a chance as the best team when we go into the postseason. That makes me feel like it's not real. I'm trying to
see. I think that's the nature of the sport. I think, like baseball, it's a sport of failure. Like, if you fail 70% of the time to get a base hit, you're a Hall of Famer because you batted 300. And I just know this from having played baseball, and then just obviously watching the game. The greatest players go in slumps, batting slumps, and pitchers. So if a top player goes into a slump, or players during the playoffs, that's the wrong time. Or if pitchers get hot, or a great pitching staff can dominate a game or a series. And that is why I totally agree with you. The best team probably rarely wins the World Series because how many times just during the regular season do you see a superior team go play an inferior team, like a last place team, and lose the season, that series? They might win 1 out of 3 against it. It happens because of the nature of the sport. Look, the best way, you remember this back in the day, they used to just have the pennant, and the winner of the American League, or the best record in the American League, played the best record in the National League in the World Series. That's how you could determine the best team. But I don't want to go back to that because the playoffs are fun and exciting. But you're right. The best team doesn't. The Dodgers have been great for more than a decade, and they got 1 World Series.
Yeah, like a little kind of bubble World Series, like the bubble NBA Finals.
Right,
they got.
It was. And I don't know how you fix it. I agree, other than to go back to the way it used to be, which none of us wants.
Yeah, maybe just fewer teams. But then I'm asking for a weird thing. I talked about with Klosterman, Chuck Klosterman, about how I need to be tricked into thinking the best team won. And when you include too many teams and a 500 team wins the World Series, then I can't be deceived anymore. And that's a problem.